As you know, I'm discussing about different issues, thematic issues in a street car named Desire. In my previous lecture, I have talked about how we shall read or how we can read a street car named Desire itself as a play that is itself a game of card. How it is constructed like as a game of card develops and finally um, ends with proclamation of one as the winner and another as the loser. So, of course, in that analogical discussion, I mentioned it that Blanche is the loser and Stanley was the winner. Today, in this class, I would like to tell you one story. Basically, this is a myth of Philomel, or otherwise called Philomela myth or Philomel myth. And perhaps you know this myth that Philomela or Philomel was the princess, was a princess of Athens, and she had a sister named Procne, Procne, Procne. Procne was married to king of Thrace, okay, king of Thrace, named Tereus. Now, this in this story or in this myth, what we see is Philomela was raped by Tereus. That means sister-in-law was raped by brother-in-law. And here there was another third character, sister of uh, Philomel, that is Procne. I want you to similarize. I want you to uh, bring it, bring the analogy in your mind that here Philomel is Blanche, Procne is Stella, and Tereus, husband of Procne, is Stanley. So, in a way, it is a recreation. I mean to say, a street car named Desire is a recreation of that myth of Philomel or Philomela. The story of Philomela myth goes like this, that Procne, the elder sister, was very fond of her younger sister Philomel. So she desired and expressed her willingness to bring her sister at her place to her husband Tereus. Of course, Tereus did not disagree, and he himself escorted his wife Procne to Athens to bring Philomela at their place. After a sojourn or stay for a few days, Philomela was going back, and this time Procne did not accompany her. Instead, Tereus was escorting Philomela back to Athens. In the beginning of the story, it was suggested that Tereus had a promiscuous desire for Philomel. So, I mean to say, Tereus had sexually desired Philomel. So, finding this to be an opportunity, while they were alone, Tereus was taking Philomel back to Athens. Tereus raped Philomel. So this was a rape This was a case of violence, okay, and more violence was to follow because Philomel, she threatened Tereus to tell everything to all and bring him to disreputation and to bring out his real nature to all, to make it public. Here, Tereus was very angry. He forbade Philomela not to disclose anything about this rape, about this incident, but Philomela was quite adamant and she made it a point that, of course, if she leaves, then she will disclose it to all, especially to her sister Procne. This angered Tereus, and Tereus had cut off the tongue of Philomel. So Philomela turns voiceless, tongueless in the sense voiceless, because her tongue was cut out. So this is another violence that followed the first violence of rape. What I wish you to understand from this is the abnormal kind of relationship between man and woman that has been highlighted in this very story of Philomela, myth of Philomela. This story occurs in Ovid's Metamorphoses. I hope you have heard this name of Ovid's Metamorphoses. Metamorphoses, which also consists of other mythical stories. Okay, they found their, of course, relevant places in different subsequent writings. Especially this very story of Philomela or the myth of Philomela uh, was connected with uh, I mean to say not connected, basically not connected, rather say was reworked upon, recreated in different ways, especially during the Romantic era. And we find that Shelley, Keats, and then Sidney, all of them had taken up this story to recreate their own stories in their poems and writings. What happened to Philomela? Philomela, now a tongueless, voiceless lady, of course, could not narrate what happened to her. She was subjugated to violence after violence, but still she was determined to relate her story, to disclose her story of being raped by Tereus, her own brother-in-law, to all, to Procne in particular. The myth follows like this, that Philomela then had woven a tapestry. Tapestry is a kind of robe, R-O-B-E, robe, or a dress, or a garment, piece of garment, whatever you say. So she had woven a tapestry, and she had woven out her own story of being raped by Tereus in that tapestry. It was picturesque description of her being raped by Tereus. And when this tapestry fell into the hand of Procne, Procne immediately understood the meaning of this tapestry, which of course Philomela could not tell in words, but she told it in pictures through that woven out tapestry. I hope you understood. What follows next is more surprising. Both the sisters, Philomel and Procne, they decide to take revenge against Tereus. And who is Tereus? Procne's own husband and Philomel's brother-in-law. So they decide to take revenge. How do they take the revenge? Both Procne and Tereus had a son. They had a child, and this child was murdered. This was how the revenge is being taken. The child was murdered, severed his head, and the body was boiled, cut into pieces, cooked, and served to Tereus as food, as lunch. And Tereus eats it. After the lunch was over, Procne and Tereus, they brought the severed head of the child to Tereus, and Tereus immediately understood the implication that he has been served with the meat of his own child. You know, violence begets violence. So one violence is answered with another violence. This entire story is so much complicated that it has given birth to different sort of controversies, debates, because here two women, the representatives of motherhood, killing their own child, killing a child to take revenge on a male, Tereus. So this is the hazardous, relationship, man-woman relationship that has been depicted in this myth. I do not want to go further or in detail of what sort of man-woman relationship it is actually projecting and implicating. Rather, I want you to now compare between the story of Philomel and the story you find in A Street Car Named Desire. Finally, what happened in that myth. Tereus was so angry that she mm, was about to kill both of them, Philomel and Procne. So they fled, and they prayed to God in order to escape the wrath of Tereus. They prayed to God to turn them into birds. So Philomel turned into bird nightingale, and it is hard, as it is narrated in Metamorphosis by Ovid, that Procne was turned into a swallow bird, and Philomela into a nightingale bird. Now, if you compare the two stories, what you find is that there was also a case of childbirth with Stella. Stella also gives birth to a child. But what is, I mean to say, the dissimilarity with this myth and this story is that here in myth, Procne takes the side of her sister Philomel. She believes in the story of the reflected or woven out in that tapestry. She believes in her sister. She believes that though she was not narrated to by Philomel, Procne believes that it was Tereus who raped her sister Philomel, and she was the one who was in fact moved by the urge to take revenge. But here in the story, we find Stella did not believe in Blanche's story. When Blanche told it repeatedly, Blanche was not voiceless, Blanche was not tongueless, but still she is rendered tongueless or voiceless. It was the pressure of the scenario of the society, of the male dominated society. The male dominance basically is working out here. Though she has voice, still she is voiceless. She is marginalized. She is pushed to the periphery. What I'm talking about, Stella did not believe in Blanche's story. Blanche was raped by Stanley, but Stella takes the side with her own husband, Stanley. So this is the dissimilarity. Here there is no case of murder. That is another dissimilarity. So a violence was avoided. A major violence was avoided, though a violence was committed in the very act of raping. But the second violence was avoided by the act of Stella, the act of supporting her husband instead of supporting or taking side with her sister. But the question is, has this behavior of Stella really been appreciated, or is it, I mean to suggest, would you, is it, would you support this act of Stella? Of course, debates, arguments will follow, but that's all about the theme that I wish to relate in this class. Thank you.